This is the 10th time since 1968 that Michigan has not been in the AP top 25 or AP preseason poll, whether it was top 20 back then. I didn't go any further back than that. One, we didn't have a preseason polling until the 50s. And then two, you start getting into an era where freshmen are ineligible. It's just a different era when you get past the late 60s. Okay, pre-integration, still in a lot of parts in the South, still integrated racially. So if you go back to 1968, 2021 is the 10th time that Michigan was not ranked in the preseason AP poll. 5 of those previous 9 times, they ended the season 12th or higher. Once they ended the season number 2 in the final AP poll behind national champion Oklahoma. So now the other 4 times were the 3 seasons under Rich Rodriguez, and then he was fired, and then 2014 under Brady Hoke, and he was fired. So what that trend line kind of tells me as a Michigan fan is for a program that, you know, and any program that has the blue blood name and fan base and tradition Michigan has is going to get some built-in benefit of the doubt, or as other fan bases like to call it, overrated, okay? So what that tells me is when they're down on us, either they're really right or they're really wrong, right? And this kind of feeds into what I have been saying this entire offseason. I really don't think this is going to be some kind of 8-4, you know, they made some good steps. You know, I really don't believe that. Like, I really believe Jim Harbaugh is getting canned, which will never be official. He'll retire and get a nice check. They won't officially fire, you know, one of the greatest players in school history. They'll do what they did with Bump Elliott when they set him aside for Bo Schembechler in 1968, okay? But to me, it's either he's done or he's Big Ten Coach of the Year kind of a year. I don't think this is just going to be, oh, yeah, I mean, it's solid, you know, young team. I can see they made some steps. We'll see what they're doing next year. I mean, that's the way we think, you know, from the outside intellectually. But if you look at the trend line here, and I think also the youth on this team, and the youth of the coaching plays into this too, okay? Like I think when you've got 7 new coaches, 6, but we lost one to Buffalo as a head coach, so we had to add a 7th. So 7 different coaches since last year. Then all the youth on this team. To me, this thing either like coagulates at one time and lightning strikes and they get off to a great start, win that early game against Washington and get on a roll, and they're playing Ohio State for the Big Ten East last week of the year kind of a season. Or we're going into November where you're at Penn State. You've got the sandwich game of all – actually, you've got Indiana at Penn State, then the sandwich game of all sandwich games at Maryland, and then Ohio State. And we're wondering, do you think we can get Matt Campbell or not? Okay, I think it's one of those 2 things. I really do.
As soon as you sent me that trend, I immediately went to the 1985 rankings because I thought of the team that you brought up that finished number 2 in the rankings, even though they did not win the Big Ten championship 10-1-1 because they were coming off that deplorable 6-6 campaign in which they played BYU in the Holiday Bowl in '84. So I figured that would be one of them. Bo's first season was obviously the big upset against Ohio State.
They weren't ranked that year, 1968. Yeah. And Bump Elliott's last year, they were not ranked in the preseason poll. That year, they were actually number 4 in the country heading into the final against Ohio State. That was the infamous 50-14 game where Woody put the starters back in to go for 2. And when he was asked why he didn't go for 2 by Joe Falls of the Detroit Free Press back in the day, he said, because I couldn't go for 3. All right. So 68, 69, 85, and 2011. They were not in the preseason poll in Brady Hoke's first season. They finished 11-2 and 12th that year after winning the Sugar Bowl. And then you also mentioned Harbaugh's first year. You know what's funny also is they almost got the exact same place in the preseason coaches poll, 33rd, that they got in Harbaugh's first year. They were 34th. So I mean, this thing has really come full circle now under Jim Harbaugh. So he's about either to get Hokeized or he's about to remind us, you guys remember I was 6 inches from winning a damn Super Bowl once, right? It's going to be one of those 2. I really don't think, Mark, you and I are sitting here and having a conversation after the Ohio State game. Well, they played tough, moral victory, 8-4, solid step. I really don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be by about Halloween, we all know, they're moving on, or we're having a conversation at Thanksgiving if he's Big Ten Coach of the Year or not.
Steve, this is why I tend to disagree on the final win total assessment. If you were going to present to me either boom or bust, it was going to be either or. And by boom or bust, I mean like 10-2, maybe even 9-3, a really strong 9-3 that's fringe top 10 versus a 6-6 or worse, 5-7, something in that range. I would take the bust, either or. But the reason I tend to side in the middle is because of the talent on the roster. So basically, if we take 6 games out of this equation, meaning the 6 games that they played in 2020, Jim Harbaugh, though disappointing in not winning Big Ten titles, not beating their rival, is still delivering roughly top 15 teams every season. And again, the recruiting classes have not fallen off. So that should add up to a capable football team that can play top 15 to 20 football.
See, that's really the debate. If you take away 2020 because of the full body of work and come to the conclusion that it's a COVID year, and we're doing that for teams like Penn State, for example. Now it's funny on the other end, like for Indiana, we all suddenly think that the program's had a major breakthrough because we're not saying when a team that did really good last year, we're not saying throw COVID out. We're only saying that when they did really bad. All right. Here's why I'm not doing that as a Michigan fan. And by the way, I want you to be right. Okay. Brother, I'm closer to 50 than 40. Okay?
I don't know if you do, because I'm in that 8-4, 7-5 range. My official pick has yet to be released, but I'm in that range. So I don't know if you want to be lost in the middle there.
No, I don't want to be lost in the middle. Okay. But I want this to be successful. This is still the favorite player of my youth. Coaching searches, there's all kinds of speculation about Matt Campbell, and one of my little birdies spoke to a member of an Ohio State coaching staff, not football, but another sport, who follows football very closely, and told me that they down in Columbus, they think he's an Urban Meyer level talent. Now, you know me, I live in Iowa. I've been very close to the Iowa State program in the past. I'm well aware of the work that Matt has done. I mean, you're talking about an Iowa State program that has only been ranked in the top 10 4 times in the entire history of the AP poll, Mark, and 3 of them are under Matt Campbell, okay? What he's done here is near Bill Snyder levels of resurrection. That being said, you're talking about a guy that has turned down multiple NFL jobs. He'll have his pick of college and NFL jobs again this offseason if they're anything close to as good as what they were last year, let alone if they're as good as their preseason ranking. It's no guarantee right now that we end up with him. You throw in the politics of Michigan, and we saw that when Lloyd stepped down, they couldn't agree on who to rally behind and everything else, and that divisive process. Coaching changes are a gambit. They're a roll of the dice, man. I mean, it's hard. So I would prefer, particularly because I like several of the new hires that he's made. I like Steve Clinkscale. I like Mike Hart. I like Ron Bellamy. I like several of the hires he's made. I would prefer that this works. I just have lost all faith that it will. And here's why last season broke me. Because I really thought, last year, whether you agree or not, but, Jim went out there and marched with Black Lives Matters with his players. He was front and center went out and marched against his own school president with his players, let us play. It really looked like he had finally figured out he had to be more of a college coach, if you know what I'm trying to say. That he really needed to be more directly involved in the lives of his players, and they had to be more than just football prospects like in the NFL. And look at it. Remember last year how Wisconsin kept having stops with COVID, even during the preseason? Michigan never did. Ohio State had stops. And Michigan. Michigan with its med school and its elitism. Dude, that they were testing guys 3 times more than anybody else was just so they can play the self-righteous card, right? And we still couldn't. Our guys followed all of the protocols. He was bonding with his players. It really looked like this was a year that culturally they were going to take advantage of this circumstance. They go out the very first week against Minnesota, who had all kinds of players that didn't follow the COVID protocols and were anemic in terms of depth. We named the score against them, and it's like, wow. And Josh Gaddis's offense actually looked like this offense is supposed to look. And then they go get punched in the mouth by Michigan State in that first half and never responded again the rest of the season. And that, to me, reminded me of 2014 when Brady Hoke went down to Notre Dame in prime time in a rivalry game, and they got punched in the mouth and they got shut out in that game, if you'll recall. And then they never responded again the rest of the year. The Chinese fire drill on the sidelines with Shane, I can't remember the quarterback's last name, the quarterback with the head injury. And that just kind of looked like all of a sudden now Michigan falls apart. We have to cancel games. We've got fleets of guys. We were going to play a third string, no star quarterback against Ohio State. The whole thing, the first sign of resistance, Mark, first sign of adversity, the whole thing just implodes and falls apart. And that is what has me spooked that this thing just can't be fixed. I hope I'm wrong, man. I hope I'm wrong. I want Jimmy to prove me wrong.
Some of your notes had me delving into Ohio State's AP poll history. And in the last 2 decades, some fan bases maybe in Tuscaloosa and Norman, Oklahoma won't be too happy with this comment, but it's uncanny how consistent this program has been under now Ryan Day, Urban Meyer, Jim Tressel.
It's even further than that. Basically since Woody Hayes had his breakthrough, what was that? 52, 54, his first national champion. Basically, ever since then, Ohio State is just 9.5 wins minimum, guaranteed, pretty much ever since then.
But since 2002 in Tressel's national championship year, basically they've been ranked between 1 and 10, basically in the top 5 to 10 every year, and they've delivered top 5 to 10 every year. It's uncanny. You can just run through it. Urban Meyer's first team was ranked 18th because of the scandal and the so forth, and that turned out pretty well at 12-0. And every other team has been ranked in the top 5 to 10 in the country and delivered top 5 to 10 in the country. And then I believe you've got to go back to very early in Cooper's tenure, the last time that they were unranked preseason.